Aíonna war géad fáilte an seo inniu, héag ócáid speisialta ó thaobh aitheantas the Príomhoifigeach Medtronic, Geoff Martha, agus aíonna speisialta. Ladies and gentlemen, you are very welcome here today to our special recognition event with Geoff Martha, CEO of Medtronic, and our special guests. We extend a warm welcome to everybody here in the O'Donoghue Theatre in NUI Galway, and also you online watching virtually, both near and far. Audience participation is most welcome, and we look forward to hearing your questions. You can submit them to us online and also here in the theatre, and we'll get to as many of them as we can shortly. Just a few housekeeping. If we can ask everybody here in our audience in Galway to turn off their phones, and just to be aware on the unlikely event that we need to exit it, just that there's an exit here to your right and to your left. Mar sin choramid tús leis arcade panel agus ba bhailim fáilte war, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome, please, to Ariel McTavish, OU President, Respiratory Interventions from Medtronic, Dr. Seamus McGuinness, Lecturer and Radius Project Coordinator from GMIT, Carmel Kilcoyne, Senior Engineer, Environment and Climate Change, Recreation and Amenity from Galway City Council, and Professor Maura Conley, Professor of Global Health and Development from NUI Galway. You're all very welcome. Fáilte, you can give them a round of applause. Ariel, if I can start with you, what has the past few months been like for you, first of all, on a personal and a professional level?
Oh, yes. Well, we were just fortunate to be at our Moorview facility just this morning and sort of reliving and remembering the past year and a half. So yeah, I would just say it has been learning, a time of pride in what we've been able to give back, how we've been able to serve our patients in this pandemic time, and all of us learning and working together. That's really been the focus. And then as we've been able to come back, I was here able to come in October for the first time in a couple years from the States. So it was very nice to see everyone, to reminisce, to be with the people that we had all been partnering together, as well as to meet the partners here.
I think that's everyone has liked. It's actually meeting people in person once more, which has been fantastic. Ariel, can you tell us about what you're announcing in Galway today?
Yes, so we have a very special campaign that we're calling Giving Back to Galway, and it's really in recognition of the time of the pandemic response and what was done here, both by our own employees as well as by the community. And there's different prongs. One of them is to remember and to know that was a very special, specific time when we had to ramp up our production, and it required support and help throughout the community, as well as dedication of our own employees. So remembering through an art exhibit that will be a contest that someone will come up with something to commemorate the time, so that we'll always, all of us, remember and never forget, and never forget to be grateful for that. Part of it, as well, is their community, to be thankful for the community support that we've received throughout the time from both, again, the employees, their families, the support systems that they got, and all throughout the community of everyone coming together to help. And part of that is working with Galway Council to work on developing a local park and making that more of a community feeling. So a way of saying thank you to everyone for their support. And then finally, thinking of the future, how do we look into the future and know that hopefully we'll be beyond this at some point, but knowing also that it's very important to continue to research pandemics, and we really wanted to support the work that Dr. Connolly's doing with that, and so that we can continue to help be a part of solutions in the future.
Why is it important to Medtronic to recognise the Galway community in this way?
Yeah. It's such an important part of our culture of the people here to give back on a constant basis. So this is even before COVID, being part of the community, giving back within different organizations, donating their time, and even through the pandemic when they were working 24/7, finding time to give back. So it's part of the culture. It's part of what people do here, and so we felt that it was really part of what we should be doing as commemorating and honoring the community here.
Seamus, what do you make of this, and what do GMIT make of it?
It's been a fantastic opportunity to collaborate with our neighbours. Medtronic is just a stone throw from the Art College in here, and it's also been a very interesting research process, because it throws artists and engineers together, and that's a really exciting combination, with the artists with the vision and the engineers with the technical ability. Even during the shortlisting process, we worked with Derek and Alma and Elaine. There's a team there, and when we were going through the proposals, they were kind of going, "Oh, we've this kind of tape, we've got that kind of thing." So the possibilities they're only beginning to unfold, and there seems to be a need for it too, because the buy-in from both the artists, which we must remember, artists have been particularly badly hit during the pandemic. A lot of their careers has been fantastic. It's just been the highest number of applications we've had for any commission, but also the uptake and the excitement and the curiosity of the community in Medtronic. So it's like this really very natural collaboration where we were both feeding off each other all the time. And one of the exciting things about it, we've got to the shortlisting stage now where we have shortlisted 3 artists, but we don't really know what's going to happen, and that's quite exciting. And that was a bit difficult for the engineers to get their head around, because generally they know they're going in a straight line forward. But also it's been very rich, but on the other side, it's been very rich for us to kind of that rigor of to work with engineers. So, and that's not a new concept. Artists and scientists and engineers used to always work together, like when you think of Leonardo or all any of these guys. But in the 20th century, they kind of seem to separate. But now there is this convergence. But also for us too, is the more I kind of talk to Medtronic, it will be an art piece that will be a representation of that lived experience of the Medtronic communication during that time when they had to kind of pull out all resources and all stops for the pandemic, and also a validation of their experiences. But to me, the exciting thing about it, this is not just like a regular commission where you have a commissioner who will give you the money to do something, they say come back when it's ready. The Medtronic community have been involved in every step of the process. So they're in the decision-making process too. So it's a true collaboration in many sense, and I think the longer-term impact of this short process that we've been working on is there's actually a great hunger to develop a more longer-term strategy for working with community-based projects. And so with the expertise of the Art College, we have 450 creative souls under our roofs, and Medtronic's review must be similar. But to put those two energies together and to work in new ways, I think is going to be exciting for everybody. Yeah.
The project is breathing life into art. So I know you can't say who has been shortlisted or anything like that there, but can you give us a sense of the type of commissions that you've got or the type of ideas that you've got? Yeah. You mentioned it was one of the biggest ones in a very long time.
The most strongest applications were those who were the artists who really wanted to spend time with and talk to the Medtronic community. And we have a section of people from management right through to kind of engineers right through to kind of across the whole section of it. So it's going to be based on the stories of the people, that lived experience that people lived on. And we will, hopefully we're trying to kind of see what kind of exciting toolbox Medtronic's have so we can work with and kind of create an ambitious piece of artwork. And from GMIT's point of view, we're obviously very glad that there's an opportunity for a graduate to make an ambitious artwork, but we're also very glad that we have formed this new working relationship, which is Medtronic's with the Radius project in GMIT. We try to work with communities within a 2-kilometre radius of our building. So what we're trying to do, how can we use creative processes to improve the society around us. So in many ways, I think we found our perfect partner before we found each other. And it's just exciting. But to me, the most exciting thing is the buy-in from the Medtronic community and the artists. That's been really good. So I'm really looking forward to see what happens.
Yeah. You haven't given us too much there information on
no,
just have to wait and see. But as you've touched on there, that community impact, of course, and the collaborative process is great with Medtronic. Carmel, just going to you from GMIT's perspective as well. Like, just tell us a little bit about the potential of Sullivan Park and where did this whole idea come from?
I suppose Sullivan Park is located, it's in a more mature part of Galway City in Merview, which is very much a residential area, and it's located right across the road from the Medtronic plant. And again, the back door of the GMIT complex is it borders onto O'Sullivan Park as well. Now, the park itself is probably best known for a soccer facility that's located within the park, but we've other facilities in there, and the problem is that the park is just not well known. We've a brand new running track in the park and new exercise equipment and everything already in there, but people don't know about it. So the park itself is probably a little bit tired. And why we're quite excited about having gotten this engaged with Medtronic on this is it's a chance to breathe new life into this park. And the big thing really is surrounding the park itself are older houses. They date from the 60s and 70s, and a lot of the residents are retired people that are living there. And we want to get those people into the park, but not just the older people. We want to get everyone back into our park. So the project we're looking at is, first of all, just opening up the entrance to the park, which is right across the road from Medtronic. And again, opening up the paths, widening them, making the surface smoother, making it much more accessible for everybody, be it people that are older, be it people that are in wheelchairs, that are people who have buggies. And again, part of it is to just really look at putting more seating in, getting a picnic area into the park itself. And then for the people who want to exercise, for the younger people, for the students, for the workers in Medtronic, is to get them using our facilities so that we're going to mark all the walkways, label them as well with the kind of biodiversity that you're going to see in the park itself, to know what distance you want. If you do want to go for a short walk, you want to go for a longer walk, what are your options in terms of those? Galway City Council in the last couple of years signed up for the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan, and this is something we're really going to put into this park, and the planting. Our planting is going to be very exciting and very innovative in this particular park. And again, it's about getting colour, it's about getting wildflower meadows into the park, it's about enhancing the early pollinators and the late pollinators and having a food source for them. But more than anything else, what we want to do is get life back into the park, get people back into the park, as I said, all ages, from children right up to the older community, into the park so they can use it, and that they can feel safe with the amount of passive surveillance that you will find with the extra people there in the park. So this is really, I suppose, at the moment it's a hidden gem in Galway City. We really want to polish up that gem, and we're really, really pleased to do this with Medtronic. We're very, very excited about this project.
What way, Carmel, has the pandemic changed the way, I suppose, we public view outdoor spaces? Have you noticed a difference in that?
Absolutely. From a city council point of view, we're very lucky in Galway in that we have an awful lot of parks and beaches and woodlands in Galway. But what we've really noticed is the number of people that are out and about, the people who didn't know there were parks even 100 yards from them, because people were so busy going to work and coming home, and they weren't even aware of our parks. And now parks like Sullivan Park, there's lots of walkways that you can develop right around them, and people just want to go in, even just for a little bit of headspace. They just want to sit for a minute. They want to enjoy the outdoors. They really appreciate the outdoors, where they feel safe away from the pandemic. So it has been a huge change in numbers that are using all of our parks, and especially Sullivan Park.
So in terms of timeline, do we know when this will be completed, or where are we at with this?
Well, we hope that it will be substantially, I suppose, completed by the end of next year, but that we're hoping to get an awful lot of it done in the early part of the year. So you should be able to see it from the beginning, because already we're going in there now, we're in the out of the bird nesting season at the moment. So we're going to start cutting back, with our own staff, get, some of the shrubs back into shape and get ready for the main project, which we hope to kick off early next year.
Well, looking forward to that. That sounds fabulous. Maura, you, of course, work here as Professor of Global Health and Development in NUI Galway. Can you just tell us a little bit about the work that you do, and how has the past 18 months been for yourself and for your team?
Okay, so I trained in medicine here in Galway and then worked with the World Health Organization in Geneva. I was based there for 15 years, working on emerging diseases. So the last 20 months have been, I suppose, a roller coaster of seeing what we predicted actually coming true. I would have worked in a lot of developing countries where we had outbreaks of emerging diseases, and we would have had SARS-1, which you may be familiar with from 2003, which was a real wake-up call. And I guess in some ways, a lot of my colleagues, we'd have been called shroud wavers, or you're over-egging it, or there's not a big, the risk is in low-income countries. So I think what we've realized, it was this week 2 years ago that first spillover event occurred in Wuhan. And look at how it has completely turned our world upside down. Everything we thought we could control and we could be in charge of, we're not in control of the biological world, and it continues to threaten us. So what we see here in Galway, so I then returned to Galway in 2015 working on a pandemic project, which was looking at how prepared was Europe for the next pandemic. So we did a risk assessment as to what was out there, what are the biggest risks that we face, and how prepared are our health systems, including our ventilator capacity. And we came up with a number of solutions, and one of the big areas was the whole area of supply chain and procurement, and the ability of nations and countries to to scale up production of key medical countermeasures. So what we witnessed here in Galway was quite remarkable, and I wasn't aware that Medtronic, and I grew up in Renmore, so around the corner was the global hub of production and manufacturing of ventilators. So having spent 15 years abroad working in the area of respiratory infections and then seeing this incredible feat at the time, and remember, we had all of the initial lockdown measures, all of the restrictions on travel, all of the lockdown measures, and Medtronic managed to scale up production from 100 ventilators to 400 ventilators in a very short time scale. So the project is about recording that, documenting that, capturing that experience, and ensuring that we are better prepared for the next pandemic. And while we're still dealing with Omicron and it's a difficult time going into Christmas, we have to ensure that all the lessons that have been hard won over the last 20 months are not lost when we move into the next crisis, be it a financial crisis or a weather crisis or whatever.
What will your research focus on now, Maura?
So what we're going to do is look at the case study of Ireland, and we're also going to look at Italy as two major contributors to the manufacturing of ventilators during COVID-19. We're going to look at the legal issues around the production, the supply chain issues, the procurement. We're going to look at other developments that were in the ventilator domain, and see how can we scale up production more efficiently in the future. And we'll be looking also at training materials and how, because what we saw was that there was an exponential increase, not only for ventilators, but obviously for the people around them who manage the ventilators. And here we have an example here of a machine that has saved, this machine has saved hundreds of thousands of lives across the world, being produced in this city. But in addition to the machines, you also had to have a very highly trained staff workforce around them. And so what we'll be looking at is what materials that were used, what user manuals worked, what YouTube videos, for example, how have innovations in training and knowledge transfer, how was that used during COVID-19, and how could we improve it to another level so that people who are, so nurses who may not have long-term background in ventilation can rapidly upskill to be able to take part in a health system response to a future pandemic.
Yeah, thanks, Maura, for that. There's just so much work going on here in Galway. Ariel, if I leave the final words to yourself, and your employees, they must be really excited about everything that's happened here. What have you found the local reaction to that been?
Yes, there is a great deal of excitement, and I would start by saying originally I think we had planned to have more of them actually here and had to have some restricted presence. So I know a lot of people are watching that have been working very hard on all three of these different programs with our partners. And so yes, the reaction is one of participation, one of enthusiasm, and one of excitement. And I think especially for our unknown artwork, we're definitely waiting with bated breath to understand what will happen with that. But for all of the programs, you know, I think they're able to partner and to work together with our collaborators, and that enables us all to kind of get better and work together.
You may have answered it, but I was just going to ask you, what are you most excited about?
I'm excited about just coming and seeing the progress. So I am excited about the artwork. I'm excited to see the park. I got to walk through it last time and kind of see where things are going to be. And certainly with Dr. Connolly's work, that will help us in the future. We did a lot in those areas, but you know, thinking about having an external expert look and study it to really understand how we can make sure to do better. All of those things.
Lots to look forward to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause to Ariel, Seamus, Maura and Carmel. Carmela Myers.
Thank you.
We wish them all continued success in the projects that they are embarking. So as we know, partnership and collaboration, as we've heard, is key to this morning's event. And many of you have already submitted questions. So if you have questions that you want to ask our next panel very shortly, please do so. Please submit them to us. We have roaming mics going around here in the O'Donoghue Theatre that you can put your hand up and actually submit your question. And also online as well, we have John Caulfield, who's the Director of Strategy here in NUI Galway, monitoring answering those questions and themes. So we'll get some feedback from him later on what your questions are to our next panel. But of course, as I mentioned at the start, we're here today to recognise our special guest, Geoff Martha, CEO of Medtronic, and to look at Galway's role and NUI Galway's role in the pandemic. I'm delighted then to give a very warm welcome, a céad míle fáilte, to Geoff and Professor Ciarán Ó Uachtarán NUI Galway. So if they can come to the stage now.
All right.
Good to meet you.
Yeah,
How are you
too.
keeping?
I'm doing well.
You're having a whirlwind tour around Galway. How's it going?
It's been great. I really love coming to Ireland. I started coming here in 1994, and the first time I came, I stayed for 6 weeks, and stayed not too far from here. But I really love coming here.
Travel, business, pleasure. Just
it was business. I was working for General Electric at the time, GE, and we were doing something with GPA House and Tony Ryan's business at the time, and so I was here for business. But I think I was 24 years old, so there was definitely some social aspect of it as well. And
that's why you stayed 6 weeks.
That's 6 weeks and 15 pounds. Yeah. So yeah, funny story. I was engaged to be married at that time to my wife, who's here with me this weekend, and she was back in the U.S. and I gotten fitted for my tuxedo before I came, and spent 6 weeks in Limerick and Shannon and touring around Ireland, and was introduced to Guinness, and I went back to the U.S. after those 6 weeks, and my tux did not fit. I'll just leave it at that.
So,
my wife was not happy.
But did you get a new suit? Did you fit into it? What happened?
I got the tailor to come back and let it out a little bit, and all was well. But the picture, your wedding picture, it's in our bedroom. My wife looks fantastic. I look horrible. It's the most chins I've ever had, and but it was a great memories though. It was worth it.
You had good time.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Geoff, bring me back to when you became CEO of Medtronic. So it's April 2020. We're in the eye of the pandemic. So talk to me about your first day as CEO. It must have been memorable.
It was actually what I remember most was a Sunday, actually. So it wasn't technically my first day. It was like the week before, and I was in my basement trying to get some exercise and still working off those 15 pounds from Ireland. And my phone, I usually don't keep my phone on when I'm exercising, but my phone, I left it on. There's so much going on, and it starts ringing, and with these blocked numbers, and I'm picking it up, and it's the White House, it's the Taoiseach, it's various heads of state, governors of states in the United States. I mean, in the period of like 2 or 3 hours, I got so many calls because it had just become apparent to the world that ventilators were key to helping mitigate the patient impact from COVID, and that there was a massive shortage. The governor at the time of New York and the CEO of New York City's largest hospital went on public and saying we need 500,000 ventilators just in New York City. And if you kind of do the math, it equates to a lot of ventilators around the world. And we just didn't have that kind of production capability. So it was that moment when I realized that, okay, they want all these ventilators around the world. And I talked to Ariel, and we're making, 200 a week, 100 a week. And I'm like, wow, so we need to do something different. And that moment, I realized that, my life had changed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been a really challenging time, Ciarán, for everybody around the world. We all saw those pictures as well, and terrified an awful lot of us as well. Just from your own personal perspective, like, what has been the most challenging personally and professionally as well for you over the past 18 months?
I think the sense of, and I think you were talking on the way over about the sense of community in Galway, and thanks, Geoff, about the mhol, if you like, concept of bringing in the harvest together. And I think that's something that was very evident in the context of COVID, the work of the hospital, the university, and Medtronic and others together. And I think that challenge of doing that in the context of particularly of communication, and the absence, if you like, of that breakup, if you like, of communication that happened in COVID, I think particularly challenging, the sense that and I think Geoff probably feels the same, when in these leadership positions of complex organisations, that in one hand you're on your own, but on the other hand you have a responsibility for 2,500 staff and 20,000 students. And I think that sense of community and continuity, I think, was particularly challenging in COVID. But what came out of it was very strong. In other words, that even in the absence of what we usually have, the socialisation that Geoff would have had when he was here, we still maintained, and in fact, in some cases, strengthened that sense of community. So even though there were challenges, and clearly it was a very difficult time, both for individuals and for organisations, I think that sense of community that's here came out very, very strongly. And I think it's something that we will build on. A lot of the work that Maura and others are doing, I think we'll build on that. So the challenge, I think, was that sense of while we were distant, we were also needed to be together. And I think we achieved that. And
it was also collaboration, wasn't it? It brought more collaboration to the fore. Like, did you find that in the university, Ciarán, there was more collaboration, and maybe looking ahead with our crystal ball, like where could we see improvements in that?
Yeah, and I think it has been challenging. So I think there has been fragmentation as well as collaboration. But I think, again, talking to Geoff in the context of Galway, the fact that the hospital is both physically and metaphorically across the road is very important for us. So clinicians working in the hospital as well and doing research. I think the work on the ventilators was a very clear example, and there are many others, of where clinicians who have a research frame found particular solutions and then worked with Medtronic in the research context in order to implement what needs to be implemented in quick order. So it wasn't that this was something that would require years of work. It was actually in some days hours and days. And I think colleagues and both here and in Medtronic deserve real credit for that work done. We were, as colleagues might know, the Sunday Times University of the Year this year. And I think one of the reasons was that reaction, that sense of community that we had. A lot of the case studies that captured their imagination came out of the hospital and researchers in the hospital, and that sense of kindness that we had as an institution, but also as a community together. Now, so I think as the pandemic has continued, that has become more and more difficult to maintain. I think the last 6 months, for example, I think has been much more difficult than, in many ways, than the first 12 months. So that's we need to keep that going, because I think we mustn't forget that what got us through in many cases was collaboration, cooperation, working together. And even though we're doing that at different paces and in different contexts, that's been that collaboration, as you mentioned, has been a particularly important part of what the COVID experience was. And we need to not forget that and build on that. Right.
Just speaking about community, you were at the ventilator plant this morning, Geoff. Tell us about that. What was that like?
Oh, it was wonderful. I said, they asked me what my reaction was, the employees. I said, surreal to finally be here, because I feel like I know it, because we're talking about intricate details of our production of ventilators every day for months and months and months. But it was inspiring to hear the stories straight from our employees' mouths, and just see the emotion in their eyes when they told these stories about what it took to ramp up the ventilators, and it was humbling. It was humbling, so inspiring and humbling. And there was so many stories of collaboration, whether it be the residents around the facility that would, because we ramped up so many employees, they needed places to park their cars, and the residents let them park in their driveways, or how if somebody was speeding to work, they got pulled over by the police. You show them your Medtronic badge, they let you go. Or, there was so many stories. I saw parts of our ventilators that were made by SpaceX, Elon Musk's company. And the story there is phenomenal, because we put our ventilator plans online to open source them so that we can maybe get some help overcoming some of our supply chain challenges and ramp up quicker. And it is a story of how one person can make a difference. So one engineer in SpaceX downloaded those plans and said, I think we can help. Contacted an engineer in Medtronic and who wasn't even in the ventilator space, and got him to the right engineering group. And the next thing you know, we're on the phone with Elon Musk, and they had made very big contributions to the ventilator ramp up. And so the collaboration the collaboration with the IDA, the collaboration with the government of Ireland. I mean, just amazing. And that is one of the biggest lessons learned for me, is the power of collaboration. And, sometimes, we just have to make ourselves more vulnerable. Individually and as organizations. And when you do that, it can be very powerful and form trusting relationships and collaboration that takes you to a place you never even dreamed of.
And that has been a huge advantage that has come out from the pandemic, as well as a lot of organizations are going in that vein too.
Right.
Looking at, we spoke about partnership, collaboration, but research and innovation, Ciarán, as well, because we've seen more of us chatting about this as well, and that has underpinned the world's response to the pandemic. Do you feel, though, that as a result of that more people are interested in research and innovation from a general public point of view, from young people in looking at careers and educational guys? Like, what's your viewpoint on the perception of that now?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think if ever there was a sense of the importance of research, this was it. And I think universities and companies we worked with came to the fore in impact. And I think it showed two things. I think one is the importance of research and expertise, but also the agility we have. Very often universities are seen as places that are slow, that are considerate or considered. That's all true and that's all necessary. But in this case, we were seen as agile, and our colleagues in particular, I think, were very agile, very flexible in finding solutions and working with others in that. And coming back to what Geoff said, I think a really important also is the sense that universities are, and I know colleagues in general are very keen on this. Universities generally are seen sometimes as a place where you go to that we teach others, where in fact we also are vulnerable and need to learn. And I think that two-way street, I think, we didn't have the answers to COVID. We had a lot of the questions and we found some of the answers, but the sense that we need to be more open to collaboration, to working with others, that this is, as well as a teaching institution, it's also a learning institution. And learning means that you need to be vulnerable, you need to understand that you don't have all the answers, but you have in some way the technology or the frame of mind to find answers. And I think there's been a recognition of that both in the university sector in general, but also the sense that universities are also more open now to working with others, and that was always there, and the importance of research was always there, but I think it's now more understood. And the other thing I'd say is the importance of expertise in public perception and in knowledge dissemination, if you like. That is now important more than ever. It's partly because of social media, but also because of there are people who know, and people who are experts, and people who we rely on there for in public health, for example. And I think that became more evident also throughout the pandemic, is that there's so it's a kind of a strange possibly tension or conflict, that on the one hand you're vulnerable and you don't have all the answers, but on the other hand expertise is important in finding those answers. And I think those two things have worked particularly importantly and have been very much in the public domain in the context of COVID.
Geoff, we're now 18 months plus since the WHO named COVID-19 as a global pandemic. Just give us a sense of your reflections and lessons maybe that you've learned over the past 18 months or so, and can you share those with us, please?
Well, sure. I won't repeat the collaboration and partnership lesson is a big one, and we're doing many more partnerships with governments, with universities, with other industry players in our industry, outside of our industry. So a lot of partnerships is one. Another is just the power of focus and moving fast. I mean, you talk about universities can be polite word, considered, and so can big companies. And so we actually changed a lot of how we structured the company to make us smaller, right? Within a big company, create smaller companies. And so we're roughly, $30 billion of revenue a year. Instead of one big $30 billion revenue company, we broke it up into $31 billion companies. And these make it smaller. Aero runs one of those businesses. And to get them to move faster and be closer to their patients, closer to their physician customers, closer to the technologies that they're experts in, and just innovate faster. So the power of, and how important in today's world speed is. The the other thing I'd say is just, we're a technology company, and so we're biased towards technology. Oh, we do have a history in art, by the way, too. We've commissioned several pieces of famous art that that's another story. But just how important technology is in healthcare. And we're at a time where the intersection of some real technological advancements and healthcare is at the forefront of everybody's mind coming out of this pandemic. And that really, I believe, and maybe it's a bias, but technology is the only path forward in healthcare, where it's the only way you can continue to improve outcomes for patients. But at the same time, we have to lower costs and we have to improve access. And these are somewhat historically been opposing goals, right? How do you improve outcomes and lower costs at the same time? How do you lower costs and improve access? But technology enables this. And so we're doubling down. We're putting more of our resources than ever before into R&D, early stage research, product development, and just so I'm just so committed to this and doing whatever it takes for us as a company to put more resources, more of our money, more of our people, our mind share into innovating. So partnerships, moving a lot faster, taking away some of the bureaucracy so we can focus and move faster and just innovate. And that's everything that we're doing with that patient in mind. So it's innovation with the purpose. And just piling on what he was saying, is that there is a greater, from a public viewpoint, interest in coming into technology. Our applications for our technology jobs are up 50% over historical levels globally. So there is an interest, and I see young people, but even people making career choice changes to come into technology.
I'm going to go to the audience for a few questions in a few moments' time, but just before I do that, there was an award announced today.
Yes.
So by the Ireland-US Council. Tell us about that award and how proud are you to receive that? Well,
really, but the award is for our response. It's from the Ireland-US Council, and it's regarding our pandemic response, really around ventilation. And, you heard the story. We talked about it a lot today. So we're really proud, and I'm humbled to be able to represent Medtronic to receive the award. And what I'm really excited about is so many of our employees that were actually part of it, who I met today and who I've been working with over the last 2 years on this, are going to be there tonight in the Dublin Castle, which I had a chance to see yesterday, which is beautiful. And I didn't know that so many of these people had never been inside Dublin Castle. So this is a real honor for them, and they deserve it. I'm just happy to be here with my wife, Stephanie, to accept the award and be part of the celebration. It's very meaningful, Medtronic. What happened in Galway over the last 2 years is we have 100,000 employees around the world in virtually every country, and every one of them knows a story, and every one of them is just so proud to be part of a company that played that kind of a role in the pandemic, and it happened right here. We couldn't be more proud, and tonight is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, we have a word here, hÓgartaigh in Irish, which means congratulations, and I think, ladies and gentlemen, they deserve a big round of applause for that. Well done, Geoff. As I mentioned, we're going to take some questions. So we have 2 roaming mics here. I think we have 2 people. If you can put your hand up, and if you can just wait till you get the microphone, tell me your name, please, and also who your question is directed to. So, gentleman at the top here.
Peter McHugh from Biomedical Engineering here in the university, and I have a question for Geoff. It was wonderful to hear you say that there's...
Sorry, excuse me, would you mind just taking off your mask when you're just asking the question? Yeah, thank you.
A question for Geoff. It's wonderful to hear you say the increase in applications for your technology jobs. And here in Galway, we pride ourselves with educating some of the best engineers and scientists out there. What sort of graduate attributes would be important to Medtronic now and looking forward for our graduates to have?
Well, great question. For us, first of all, there's the technology, the technical prowess, right? I mean, we need that. But I think a couple skills that we're looking for, that I look for, obviously the domain expertise around whatever it is, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, data science, material science, all of that is important. And one area that's really growing fast with us is data science. I think data is really powering a lot of innovation and changing the game. But beyond the technical areas, I'd say we're looking, for people with a couple of skills. Clarity of thought. There's a lot of smart people out there, but they're not all clear thinkers. To be a clear thinker, you need to have a certain level of intelligence. But clarity of thought and how to organize so much data out there. How do you cut through it to get to the 2 or 3 critical things? Another is sense of purpose. Which I saw today, with our ventilator team. You need to care and have a sense of purpose about you, and that is a big one. We call that our mission at Medtronic. And then, finally, we, listen, and you talk about you can't know it all. You have to be humble, a sense of humility. So these are things beyond the technical areas that I mentioned. Those 3 areas.
Thank you. I might just go to John, because you've been moderating what's coming online. John, who's a Director Strategy NUI Galway. So just give us a sense of the feedback you're getting and maybe some questions that are coming through.
Alicia has questions around here.
Thanks, Grania. Yeah, we've got some lovely questions and comments coming in, and I might kick off with Tony Canavan's comment. Tony is CEO of the Sailta Healthcare Group, which represents the hospital across the road, but also across the west. And he just wanted to thank Geoff and Ciarán, and by association NUI Galway Medtronic, for working closely with the health services over the last 2 years to manage the threat here. So thought we'd start on that. Paul asked a question more broadly, and I think this is probably to both Ciarán and Geoff. What does Galway as a city need to do in order to stay relevant and a key city for companies? So we talked there about talent. Is the talent pool there? Is the capacity for growth there? Things like infrastructure. Comments maybe, or reaction from both Geoff and Ciarán. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd say the first one is the talent development. So we talked about, it is a battle for talent internationally. And as a university, we've worked very closely with industry in the area, Medtronic in particular, around biomedical engineering and undergraduate and graduate programs there, adult learning, so reskilling and redeveloping existing talent in the organisation. So I think that's one piece that I think we're quite good at in Galway, is that sense of collaboration at that level. There are other areas where we could do more, and I think that's where you mentioned areas like infrastructure and so on. So we have established a group which is looking with the City Council, with Chamber of Commerce, the university and others, looking at the actual what Galway needs to do collectively. And I think that there's that sense of what does really well in Galway is that sense of innovation, that sense of excitement that people have about the creativity that Galway represents. Sometimes that means that there isn't that sense then of collaboration. And I think in with the work with Medtronic and in the arts, I think that's a great area where we can work together. I think there's more needs to be done in that context that could make Galway even better than it is. But in talent development, I think that's one area I think we're doubling down on with Medtronic, because we know, first of all, that internationally there is that demand. So there's local talent development, but also drawing in talent from externally. So Galway has grown significantly since I grew up here in the 80s. It's now probably 3 or 4 times the size of what it was then. What that means is a lot of people living in Galway weren't born in Galway, didn't even grow up in Galway. And about 25-30% of people living in Galway are now are international, not from Ireland, which I think is a fantastic testament, first of all, to our ability to attract new talent. Right. And Medtronic's role in that is particularly important, but also in Galway as a place which welcomes people from that talent and makes it welcome here. And I think a lot of the work that the City Council has mentioned is really important in that regard. So if I was to mention one thing, it'd be the talent development. We're doing really well on it in the context of both developing local talent and bringing in talent, but it's something that is a battle internationally. Yeah. And if I was to double down on one thing, it would be that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on the talent. And companies like Medtronic play a role, universities play a role. It's an ecosystem that needs to be developed and nurtured, and that's a big one. I'd say another one is the importance of the health system in translating some of the work that we're doing, research and development, translating that into a healthcare system. And so being partnered with individual hospitals, but also with health policy. And I think that's an opportunity that we can improve on, is the collaboration between the company like Medtronic with the Irish health authorities, the health administration, on health policy. And so translating some of the work so we can kind of see it live, which it's great that you have that relationship with the hospital. It's right across the street. So that's an opportunity. And then look, we bring people from all over the world to Galway, to our facilities, to train and help us ideate. And I just met some physicians from University of Michigan last night, or yesterday afternoon, in our Parkmore facility, that are here to help us, because these are physicians these are interventional cardiologists, and they're giving us feedback on some new technology. We're in early stages, and they're shaping that. But these are busy physicians, and they are also human beings, and they want to come here for the technology, intellectual curiosity, but they also want to come to a place that's fun to come to. So, the Irish culture helps a lot. People like coming here. We have R&D facilities all over the world, and some of them aren't that popular with physicians. Like, oh, you want me to go to, I won't name names, but you really want me to go there? But Ireland is a place people like to come to. So they're going to come. They spent, Thursday and Friday in our labs, and they're going to spend the weekend and around here. So I think that's important. The Irish culture is important.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so thank you to everybody who has submitted very quickly.
Mention very quickly. I think the translation piece is really important, because I know we have colleagues here from Quorum, and Quorum is the SFI Centre for Medical Technology, Medical Devices, based here in Galway. And I think the sense, again, that there's that collaboration in research. So I'm just off a meeting with the European Commission, where 85% of PhD graduates in Europe go into industry. And I think that's something that's sometimes lost, but I think that sense of that translation across the piece. So everything that's needed here in talent development is here. We could do more, but I think Medtronic's role and the role of COVID in accelerating that, I think, has been particularly important. So thank you on behalf of the university community, but the university, the community more generally, for that contribution.
As I said, we're running out of time, so just a final word with you, Geoff. Just everybody watching, people in this room, what's the key message you would like them to take away with them today?
Look, it's thank you. Thank you for not just our employees in Galway, but the community that rallied around the pandemic response and the ventilator production. And, we're just grateful and proud that we're a big player here, and the future's bright. We're ramping up our R&D here beyond ventilators with our many cardiology projects, and the ecosystem that we've built here, I think, is special and very strategic for Medtronic, but for the healthcare industry in general around the world. So I'd say thank you and optimistic.
Great. Well, on that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you to Geoff and to Ciarán for their company this morning, and also to our earlier panel, to you here in the O'Donoghue Theatre in NUI Galway, and also watching us online. We hope you enjoyed the session. A big thank you to everyone behind the scenes from Medtronic, NUI Galway, who did Trojan work to get this event taking place today. But from all of us here then, until next time, slán, goodbye and take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.